Thanks for having us. So, as Lo mentioned, my name is Uwais Asmal, and I'm the head of advisory services at Outsource CFO. My colleague joining me, Jacques le Grange, is director, and he's got many years experience in helping SMEs with accounting and CFO services, and he's also got experience in running that OCFO business. So he's got that similar entrepreneur mindset that all of you have. So Jacques, I'm going to pull on that knowledge strings just a little bit. If you can just share with us, what do you think are the key elements of building a world-class finance function? Over to you.
Yeah, awesome, Uwais. Yeah, so I think firstly is maybe also just to think, why do you need a world-class financial function in the first place? And I think the finance function, it's not what brings you in your bread and butter, but it is that necessary thing that you use to steward the business that you are driving. And I think some of the key parts of a financial function is processes and people, just like with any other part of a business. So obviously getting the right people in that has the right skill set and knowledge to drive it. And then over time, putting that into processes as well. And I think generally we would obviously be looking at things like historic information, but then also looking at the future. So on the one side, if we can measure it, we can manage it. We all know that very well. Looking at the historic information and how to communicate that to other stakeholders, whether it's shareholders or other management or divisions within the business. It's so important to, one, know what's going on in the business, but then have creative ways of communicating that to other stakeholders. Because that knowledge gives that insight to inform them how to go about their decision making. And then the same with that, doing it in terms of future information, forecast, cash flow, that type of thing. So I think on a high level, Uwais, that's some of the things that I would say is definitely key to building a strong financial function.
If I can also maybe add some of my thoughts, you also need a strong base, a strong financial base. And if you don't have a strong financial base, you're never going to get that world-class financial function. If you're not getting regular management accounts, then don't waste your time with the rest. If you're managing your cash from your bank statement, if you're not doing things like cash flow forecasts, if you're not doing things like income statement budgets, you can't have a world-class financial function. I think also for me, if you talk about world-class financial function, that finance person should be part, it shouldn't be a silo, it should be part of the business. Also, they should be thinking equally, if not probably more about the future than about the past, because the past has happened, it's done. Yes, there's things that need to be recorded, but if your finance function is not helping you make decisions about the future, it's not a world-class finance function in my mind. Things like tax planning, there's a lot more other things, systems integration. Like if there's anything related to manual intervention, then you don't have a world-class finance function. The scary thing is you even get some listed companies where there's a lot of manual intervention. And that's one of the things that we want to eliminate by having automation in that function. And
yeah,
so, sorry, carry on, Joe.
No, just to add to that, so like you mentioned, in terms of just automating that function, there's obviously a place where in the current age and day, the digital technology that is available allows us to automate so many things. So that makes it possible to get that information at your fingertips and to make that quick decisions. Another important thing with that, apart from just automating it, is knowing what is that key figures that you have to keep your eye on. Sometimes there's so many different reports, so much information, and you need someone just to guide you through, walk you through what are those key metrics that you need to keep an eye on to drive the business growth and get to that goals that you have set out as a business owner or entrepreneur.
100%. A lot of business owners have medium to long-term strategies. Those financial forecasts, you need to have forecasts that tie into those strategies. Otherwise, it's just a dream and not a plan. And like they say, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. If I can maybe ask you a little bit more about what more can you teach the audience about finance?
Yeah,
considering the audience that we have.
I think depending on the size of business that you have, but to at least know what's going on in your business. For some business owners, the old school way would be to check your bank statement or bank transactions every day, and in that way you could manage or just have insight into what's going on for maybe some of your smaller companies. But then as a company or entity grows, it obviously becomes more than just a bank statement in terms of looking at that. And then to know what's going on, and that comes back to that key metrics that one should have, whether it's sales, a number of type of transactions or sales that's happening. Sales is obviously the lifeblood of a business, so definitely to have your eyes on that and to have that updated information and being able to measure it. Many times we find businesses where entrepreneurs run it on their gut, and I think that is a very important thing to have, because you have to have a feel for your business, but many times that can become skewed because of a number of variables. And that could lead business owners to make decisions that aren't that accurate, and they can find themselves in quite a predicament. I mean, if you think of the current economic scenario, having that insights into terms of how to steer the business is so important, and to make those quick decisions, whether you are ready to hire staff, or if you're in a place where you need to downscale temporarily till the market picks up. Again, you need to have insights into that. Otherwise, your gut might not always be that accurate, although that's an important ingredient. So, summarize, I would say definitely to have that insight, you need to know, you have to have that surety about what's going on in your business from a financial perspective, and together with your gut, your knowledge and feel of a business to run it from there. So yeah, that's what I would say in terms of that.
I agree fully with you in terms of, it also depends a lot on the size of the business. I'm going to say something a little bit controversial, but as a business owner or entrepreneur, you don't want to waste your time with compliance. Your time is valuable. So you want to focus on the things that can grow your business. But if nobody focuses on it, you're not going to have a business. That business will fail. So if you aren't going to focus on it, you need to get someone who you can trust, who can focus on it, but not only just focus on it, think outside the box. Because I mean, bookkeepers and things like that are a dime a dozen, but helping you scale and maximizing your growth, that requires a certain level of financial professional.
And
I'm going to also tap in.
Just
Sorry,
to
carry on.
Add to that point that you mentioned, Uwais, I think the big question always is, how as a business owner can you work more on top of a business than in the business? You have different books speaking about the technicians, the operational guy in the business, and that's necessary. And we find that many times first-time founders find that they have the technical skills to run the business or to do whatever drives the revenue. But in terms of running the bigger business, that's a whole different ballgame. And especially when you're starting up, you need someone that can run your finance function for you, to look out for on that part, so that you can work on top of a business, not only in the business. Otherwise, you find yourself seeing opportunities go amiss because you were focusing on working in the business, looking at compliance, SaaS type of things. You don't want those things to keep you awake in the first place, but definitely not to keep you from executing on opportunities that's at hand. So it just speaks again to that importance of, especially if you're a scaling business, if you want to go big in that sense, you definitely need a strong financial function so that you can also work on growing the business.
I'm gonna pull on your knowledge a little bit again, and I want to ask you: can you give us an example of somewhere where your client's gone wrong, or an example of things? Because I know entrepreneurs sometimes, I mean, you have to move fast, you have to make decisions quickly. Can you give us an example of something just to help the audience in what not to do?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think firstly, like many speakers said, it really takes courage to be an entrepreneur and to get your hands dirty. So firstly, respect. And I think everyone doing it out there took huge risks in various areas of their life to commit to this journey. And sometimes it can become such a lonely journey. And I think one of those things is not to go at it alone. And what I sometimes find is that entrepreneurs have support, but when it comes to their financial side of their business, they tend to want to keep that to their chest, which makes sense. But sometimes they carry that burdens on their own. And if you have someone knowledgeable, which you can bounce ideas or strategies against, that helps a lot. And to also test some of the assumptions that you make about your business. General thing is, normally, just like in life, we never just climb into a car and drive somewhere random. We know where we want to go. And I find that many times entrepreneurs, they get into survival mode. They just want to stay alive in that sense. And they tend not to plan ahead, whether that's cash flow, which is obviously key. Having that cash flow mapped out for the next while, knowing how much leverage you have in terms of that is a big thing. And then next to that is obviously the difference between profit and cash flow. I've seen so many times businesses showing a profit, and then they're surprised that they don't have cash at the end of a financial year or whatever period it might be. So I think there needs to be a place where, as an owner, you need to take in the ownership of your business. Yes, you can get an amazing CFO to help you, but you can't expect someone else to do what you're supposed to do in terms of understanding what's going on in your business. You can get someone to guide you, but it is your responsibility to understand what's going on in your business. So I think one of the things sometimes is people would like to outsource that responsibility as well. And I find that where that happens, founders or business owners can heap up problems in the sense of that, yes, you can get someone to give you insights, to tell you exactly what decisions to make. But I guess in that sense, you have to make decisions based on the financial information given to you, and you can't expect someone else to make them on your behalf.
Nobody's going to love your baby more than you.
What would you say are some of the things that you've picked up, Uwais?
I said one of the experience a few years ago where one of my clients had two separate companies, and they make decisions quickly. The one was loss making and the other one was profit making. So they thought, okay, they'll quickly transfer the employees from the loss making company to the profit making company so they can save tax. And luckily we stopped them before they did that, because they didn't consider all the HR risks, all the basic condition of employment tax risks. It would have ended up being a lot more expensive for them to transfer the employees, and a lot more cost, and potentially getting them taken to the CCMA or things like that. So I'm glad we managed to stop them in time. And if you have someone that you can at least run a theory, because I mean, obviously you've got ideas and you need to move it, but at least you have someone that you can run your theories by, or what would happen if I did this? What would happen if I did that? If you have a partner that can help you, then that's great. I think that's probably my final thoughts. I don't know if you've got any final thoughts for the audience?
Maybe something that I would love to pick your brain on. Obviously, being head of advisory, you've worked on a number of businesses, doing a various gap analysis on them. What would you say is the top 3 things that you find in businesses that business owners tend to maybe not be aware of or see as blind spots, generally speaking?
So it also depends a lot on the size of the business, because the bigger the business gets, SARS will find you. But I mean, in the smaller businesses, generally dealing with the tax or not being tax efficient, paying too much tax potentially, or they're not using the things that are available, the normal ethical things that are available in the legislation to save on tax. And I mean, cash is king. If you don't have to give that much money over to SARS, then you can employ someone else, or you can take leave at the end of the year, go away somewhere with your family. I think managing the cash flow, people don't, a lot of them, like you say, manage their cash flow from their bank account, and that's very risky, because you don't know what's coming around the corner tomorrow, next week, whether it's VAT or PAYE or bonuses or something like that. Whereas if you can at least plan your cash flow, you know what's coming. I think that those are 2 that stand out for me.
And maybe just to add on to some of the previous speakers, I think it was Manuel Kozer that just said, You can't just try to raise capital, and money is not necessarily going to be the answer to your problems, although cash flow is so important. How do you find, what's the balance between knowing you need cash flow as the lifeblood of a business, but also not only making that your focus? What would you say to that?
Tricky question, I guess. It's an interesting one. I guess having those five KPIs that we talked about, your most important being, I mean, your business is not going to be a success just because you've raised funds. You have to be a profitable business. There's lots of businesses around that have raised lots of funds, but are still making losses. And those ones stress me out, actually. I mean, because profitability and cash profits that's proof that your business is a success, not the fact that you've raised so much money. Because a lot of companies, as they mentioned in the VC discussions, 50% of them fail. So they've raised a lot of money, but they're not necessarily successful businesses. They're just arbitrage machines.
Yeah, definitely. And maybe what will you say in terms of closing remarks on the topic, takeaway, or one last comment maybe from your side for the audience?
I think for the audience, I guess I'd say you're the entrepreneur. You think outside the box. So get someone who talks your language. You get a partner who talks your language, who understands, who can explain to you things not in accounting language, because that's not going to help you. Explaining to you why it's important to you to be able to do certain taxes or certain returns, or for them to pay for those things. They must be able to explain it to you in how it benefits you, not in why it must be done from section this of the Income Tax Act, as an example. I think that will be my final words.
Hey, Lau here, one of the founders of Outsource CFO. If you enjoyed this video, make it official. Click subscribe.